Hello and welcome to today's Webisode. I am Pastor Chris, this is Xhafer, and together we're going to present the sermon that was preached last Sunday. I'm going to hand this over to Lee.
And our church has been going through the covenant names of God, and on Sunday Pastor Chris opened up on Jehovah Rapha. So we're going to explore that today.
Very good. So the covenant names. What do you understand, Lee, about the covenant names, or what did you get? What understanding did you have about that?
Something that stood out to me is that when God makes a covenant, He doesn't ever break it. And you compared to covenants and contracts together, and contracts are agreements that can be broken, but a covenant is God's promise, and God never breaks His promises. And so God's different names that He has, and He has many names, but His names are a covenant with us, and His names also represent His promises to us. He promises He's going to act in that way eternally. God never changes. So yeah, that really stood out to me.
So it's really binding to Him, His name.
Yeah.
And so when He declares His name to us, we can bank on it. It's a promise. So, Jehovah Rapha. Have you ever made a covenant?
A marriage covenant? Yep.
He said that with a question mark. Yes, it's very good. All right, so then the name, we'll talk about the name, Jehovah Rapha, or Rapha. And how did you pick up on that? What did you see in the name, this name?
The God who, so Jehovah Rapha means the God who heals. And to me, that means God, I think you said later on in your message, like Jesus is, He doesn't have healing, or God doesn't have healing, He is healing. And to me it means all sorts of healing, spiritual, emotional, physical, but He doesn't have healing, He is healing. So when we get in His presence, we are healed.
We have the opportunity to be healed.
Yep.
Yes, we make ourselves available, don't we?
Yep.
Yeah, that's good. It's and it's also, that's the healing side. What about the other side of the name, the preventative side of the name?
And that really stood out to me as well. So God not only heals us, but He warns us of things that might harm us. You spoke about how in Exodus God instructed the children of Israel to poo outside their camp. And so that was not only symbolic, like a spiritually symbolic, but it also is a natural preventative way of preventing diseases and things like that, people being around diseases. And then you talked about how in London the sewage system, if the people would have taken more note of what God instructed thousands of years ago, they could have avoided millions of deaths.
Cholera, typhoid, plague, ravished London. The River Thames became known as the stinking river, probably the most polluted and stinking river at the time. And it wasn't hundreds of years ago, it wasn't that long ago.
Yep. Yeah, and God introduces Himself as the healer for the first time in the Bible in Exodus 15:26, and I'll just read that verse. And God said, "If you diligently heed the voice of the Lord your God and do what is right in His sight, and give ear to His commandments and keep all His statutes, I will put none of the diseases which I have brought on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord who heals." And then, Pastor Chris, you went into 3 specific points in your message.
Yes, the 3 reference points. So the first one is remember who led me. It was the title of that point. Remember who led me. And it was a reference to them in the story. Do you want to pick that up?
So yeah, the Israelites murmured about the situation they were in. And then you asked us, what do we do in hard situations? How do we react? God may lead us into a desert, maybe not a natural one, or maybe a spiritual sort of desert. And you asked, how do we react in those situations?
So what do? Well, we often do things like feel sorry for ourselves. I said in the sermon that we either slit our wrists, take a bong, or get on Facebook. Really, what I'm trying to say is that we lean to an area trying to find some comfort, trying to find an escape or just get away from it, rather than ask God, what do I do now? That's really the point. And what do we do now? What did they do now? What was their issue?
Yep, so they came to the place called Mara, which means bitter water. And yeah, what did Moses do? Well, he didn't complain. You said he calmed himself down and just asked God what to do. And God told him what to do, and which was a miracle. Just put a tree into the water, and the bitter water became sweet. So God wrought a miracle. And yeah, God often gives us simple solutions to our problems if we just will stop, calm ourselves, and ask him what to do.
Yes. It wasn't logical to put a tree into polluted water or a bacteria-infested water. It wasn't written anywhere. It wasn't an instruction. It wasn't an inherited line. It wasn't a tradition. It was totally out of the blue. It was totally from God. But the thing was, Moses did it. He did it.
Yep. Then your second point was remember our part.
Yes, because God ties these things together. In that verse, he ties that. He says, if you diligently heed the voice of the Lord your God and do what is right in his sight, give ear to his commandments and keep his statutes, I will put none of the diseases on you which I brought on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord that heals you. So there is this whole area of, I'm the God who heals, but you need to be doing something. You need to be in a place where you can receive it and then walk in it. God requires us to listen to him and heed diligently to him.
And I can see about 5 verbs in there. If you heed the voice of the Lord and do what is right in his sight and give ear and keep all his commandments, then God says what he will do. So yeah.
And the biggest word, and somebody came up to me after, or actually it might have been that night, but came up to me and said, the word that really spoke to me in that was if. If. And someone said it to me this morning actually, if. And that's the word that covers this whole thing. If you would do this, if you would heed, if you would do, if you would listen, if you would obey. If.
Yep.
It's back on our shoulders a little bit, doesn't it?
Definitely. I think God always does that. And then point 3 of your message was remember where to turn, or remember who to turn to. And it also talks in this verse that I'm going to read about why the Israelites were in the desert. Deuteronomy 8:2. And you shall remember that the Lord your God, who led you all the way these 40 years in the wilderness. And why did he do that? Why did he take them to the wilderness? To humble you and test you, and to know what was in your heart, whether you would keep his commandments or not.
That's interesting, to see whether we would keep the commandments or not. And this is all still talking about Jehovah Rapha, our healer. So he ties, all these verses are tying it together, that it's not just what God can do, which is divine healing. And we love divine healing. Every week in our church we have people, we take a time where we pray for the sick, or we have altar calls for praying for the sick. We do one night a month where we pray for the sick. Divine healing is a very a strong fibre of what we do. But it's not the total name of what Jehovah Rapha means. Because John G. Lake says divine healing, there's three principles in this covenant of divine healing of Jehovah Rapha, and one of them is divine healing. But if you walk in divine health, if we would do the things those verses say, and we walk in divine health, we don't need divine healing anymore. It's obsolete, because now we're walking in divine health. And that's a great place to be. But we keep persisting on staying here in divine healing. Let's go to divine health. Let's start listening to what God says so we can stay healthy. So that and I mean, it's not talking about joining a gym and taking a lot of vitamins.
Yep.
Talking about what God says, practical ways, and how He impacts our lives.
And I think if we're in communion with God, we won't be in stress. And stress is back of so many issues, mental, physical, emotional, spiritual. So yeah, that really. And then John G. Lake said there's a third realm we can live in, which is total union of the soul with God. It's like you're living in heaven, but on earth.
That's right.
And I think probably someone like Catherine Kuhlman is someone I can think of that had that sort of life.
Yeah. Because the divine life doesn't just cover healing now. It covers finances, relationships, it covers your dreams, it covers where you want to go in the world. It covers everything. And I know some people who have been able to have God impact more areas than just health in their life and walk in them. And that's an amazing place to be. And when we're in that place, divine healing becomes smaller and smaller as a factor,
yeah.
And divine life becomes greater,
yeah.
And we walk in this different way. The world will notice we're different. People will say we're different. And
So I think if we're just looking for divine healing, we're probably looking at the healing rather than the God who just provides in all areas.
Yes, we're looking at what He can do rather than what He's instructed us to do. How we do our kingdom walk with Him, not instead of Him. And often we get into trouble and we come running back and we go, oh, God, I need your help, I need your healing, I need your supply. But if we're walking in divine healing or health, or we're walking in God's finances, we won't need to do that cry.
Yeah.
I had a friend, he still is a friend, and he was actually from Mariba, and he said to me one day, his father had just built him a house. He had this real well-paying job. His wife had a well-paying job. And I said to him, do you ever worry about money? And he said, no, never ever. And I said, how do you do that? And he said, because God supplies. Says, sometimes we get around the wrong way. I'd be tend to go, God, I need. He didn't have that place. He just know, I know God supplies. And so I'd never fret and worry about it.
Amazing place to live in.
It is an amazing place.
Well, thank you very much, Pastor Chris. I really enjoyed this topic and the way you unpacked it on Sunday. And we pray it impacted you, and this opening it up again, we pray that impacted you. So enjoy opening it up in your circle and enjoy each other's company, and we'll say goodbye for now.
Thank you. Goodbye. Bless you.